All right, ninth grade, we are starting on page 183, wrapping up this book for sure, on chapter 16, The Death Zone. And we just learned that they're having difficulties because there's a massive storm, they have frostbite, some of them are having difficulty walking, breathing. So here we are, chapter 16, page 183. On the morning of August 7th, Art Gilkey lay in his tent at Camp 8, his leg wrapped in a bandage. Outside, the rest of the team held a hurried conference in the wind. Houston told them his grim diagnosis. Gilkey couldn't climb, and at 25,000 feet, he wasn't going to recover. Their mission had changed, he said. They were no longer trying to climb the mountain. They needed to get a sick man and themselves down alive. A few hours ago, they had been hoping for weather calm enough to try for the summit. In fact, Gilkey had been chosen for the second summit team. Now he couldn't even walk. And the rest of them could only hope the skies would clear long enough for them to start down the mountain. Pete Schoening was ready for the new challenge. He thought they could get Gilkey down. He had rescued climbers on the steep slopes of the Canadian mountains, and he knew it would be grueling, risky work. Frostbite would take its toll on all of them, but it could be done. Houston didn't believe him. In fact, he didn't think Schoening believed himself. The steep ice slope just below them, the Black Pyramid, House's chimney, it would take every bit of skill he had acquired in 2 decades of climbing, every ounce of strength he had left, just to get himself down the mountain. How could they possibly carry Art Gilkey down too? It was an impossible bind. They knew they would be risking 7 lives in a probably useless attempt to save one. And yet, no one was willing to suggest the alternative. No one uttered the thought that since Art was likely to die anyway, he should be left behind. There would be no Dudley Wolfs on K2 this year. And if there was no alternative, maybe it was better to think like Pete Schoening. For the first time in 5 days, they moved with real purpose. The clouds hung high in the sky and the wind had let up a little. Compared to lower altitudes, it couldn't be called good weather, but they had to make use of it. Someone struck the smallest tent and packed it. Everyone rolled up their sleeping bags. They packed a couple of stoves and some food. Camp 6 was fully stocked, but who could say for sure they would make it there by nightfall? When everything was ready, they bundled Gilkey in a sleeping bag and wrapped him like a mummy in the remains of the collapsed tent. They secured him with ropes and started out down the snow slope toward the makeshift Camp 7. 5 days of monsoon storms had laid 2 to 3 feet of fresh snow on the slope. At first, they dragged Gilkey along, sinking to their hips. Then, as the slope steepened, they had to hold him back. The overcast turned to fog. They could barely see. But as they made their way through the loose snow, they realized what they should have known before they started. A week ago, when Schoening and Gilkey first set foot on the slope, it had been an avalanche risk. Now, with a fresh coating of unsettled snow, it was certain suicide. At any moment, the next step could dislodge hundreds of tons of snow and send them tumbling into free fall. They had to turn back. No one had the strength to pull Gilkey back up the slope. He had to wriggle out of his cocoon to help. With Molinar and Bell on either side, he balanced himself on his one good leg. He half hopped, half fell up the slope while they dragged him up by the shoulders. An hour and a half later, they staggered back into Camp 8 and re-pitched the tent they had taken down. They got Gilkey settled and crawled inside, depressed, exhausted, and trapped. The next morning brought a ray of hope. Shoney and Craig had scouted a new route along a rocky rim that bordered the right edge of the snow slope. The rim led to a gully that dropped to the level of the tiny Camp 7. The route was steep and icy, but it skirted the avalanche field. If they could lower Gilkey to the bottom of the gully, they could try to pull him like a pendulum across the ice slope to the camp. After an hour spent wrestling with the stove for a few cups of tea, Houston paid a visit to Gilkey's tent and decided the patient looked better. The swelling in his leg was down a bit, and he seemed to be in less pain. Gilkey looked up at him and said, "I'll be climbing again tomorrow." This is a picture of Gilkey at the camp. And this is when Camp 8, when he's no longer able to walk. We're going to stop there at the top of page 187, and we'll continue next time. Thanks so much, ninth graders. Take care.